que você ama em uma universidade? Aprender na prática com grandes empresas? Conviver com pessoas que mudam o mundo? Ou estudar em uma estrutura com padrão internacional? Na ANB Morumbi, tudo isso acontece. Venha descobrir por que milhares de alunos amam estudar aqui. Acesse anb.br e faça sua matrícula. Amo é ANB Morumbi. Aqui tudo acontece.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Greetings. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. Glad to have you with me. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, 877-973-7425. Very, very happy to have you here. If you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, so much more. You can follow me around the internet at Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and the like. We put up clips of the show. I got to be honest with you. We got to talk about Kamala in Atlanta. The poor people of Atlanta. Just over 100 some odd years ago, Sherman came through and burned the place to the ground. And in the process, the Department of Transportation burned down, and they lost the blueprints for how to build the roads. So Atlanta has just been building roads ever since Sherman came through. One day the roads will all connect. Until then, not only do the roads not all connect, they're all named Peachtree. So if you don't know where you're going, you're pretty screwed in Atlanta. Do you go from Peachtree Street to Peachtree Road to Peachtree Battle to Peachtree Armageddon to Peachtree, God knows why they named it this road? You're stuck. Most states you got the first street, the second street, the fourth street, the fifth street, the sixth street. And Atlanta has those, but it's like first Peachtree, second Peachtree. It's like the Baptists. The Baptists had to be involved. You got the first Baptist church, the second Baptist church. You got the third Baptist church, the fourth Baptist church. You got the first Peachtree Street, the second Peachtree Street, the third Peachtree Road, the fourth Peachtree in Ashford Dunwoody. Nobody knows where they're going. And on top of that, Kamala Harris keeps showing up and screwing up traffic. Not only does Kamala Harris show up and screw up traffic, but Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are coming this weekend to also screw up said traffic. At least they're coming on a weekend. They're going to the same venue. And you know, and I know, that the media is going to tell you that they don't have as big a crowd present. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how big of a crowd Donald Trump and J.D. Vance get on Saturday, the media will assure you it was not as big as Kamala Harris's. Because the same media that told you there was nothing wrong with Joe Biden now assures you everyone is enthusiastic about Kamala Harris. Up until 5 seconds ago, herpes was more popular in the United States than Kamala Harris. But the media now insists to you she is the most popular thing since sliced bread. And if you disagree, you're a racist and possibly a misogynist and weird. But she did come, and we should allow her to speak.
For the future. And it is a fight for freedom. Across our nation, we are witnessing a full-on assault on hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights. The freedom to vote. The freedom to be safe from gun violence. The freedom to live without fear of bigotry and hate. The freedom to love who you love openly and with pride. The freedom to learn and acknowledge our true and full history. woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. Ours is a fight for the future and for freedom. And I don't have to tell folks in Atlanta that generations of Americans before us led the fight for freedom. And now, the baton is in our hands.
Okay, I got to comment on one of the visuals of the spectacle of Kamala Harris there as well. So behind her, it is a completely non-white crowd except for one white dude with gray hair in a khaki-colored sport coat and in a light blue shirt. And, you know, God bless my brothers and sisters in the black community. They are passionate. You go to a black church, it is way more fun than going to a white church because, you know, like in my church, we don't even clap. I mean, I go to churches on occasion where they clap after a song. I'm like, you're not supposed to clap in church. And they clap. The Baptists, you know, y'all all clap at church. You get to the charismatics, you guys are raising hands in church. Like in my church, our preachers only gotten us comfortable with the benediction at the end to raise your hands like you're grabbing the benediction from him. I can't bring myself to do that. It's like, no, I'm supposed to keep my hands to myself and certainly not clap, let alone raise my hands for the benediction. Good Lord, no, can't do that. The black church, though, my gosh, it is so much fun to go to a black church. People who worship in black churches love Jesus in ways that white people will never fully appreciate. And they take that enthusiasm into a political arena where they're behind Kamala Harris and they're cheering and applauding her, fist pumping in the air. And there's the one white dude like, do I clap? This is so awkward. That guy probably goes to an Episcopal church. It just, in and of itself, the visuals there are very funny. One white guy surrounded by a sea of non-white people who are all very enthusiastic, like they're in church or something, and he's so uncomfortable. It's like clearly one Episcopalian or Presbyterian in the crowd. But to Kamala Harris's rhetoric, listen, y'all know Hillary Clinton had that famous moment where she got back into the South, and I think she was at Ebenezer Baptist, and she started talking like she was really from the Deep South. Kamala Harris does that sometimes. And people on the right like to pick on Kamala Harris for suddenly adopting a twang. I heard some commentators say she sounded like she was jiving. Here's my thing. I grew up in the Middle East, and my accent tends to change a little bit based on the people I'm around because I know my accent can be somewhat unusual, and so I tend not to pick on people for that. However, I do have to say that the Trump campaign trying to get Kamala Harris to go off teleprompter is probably a smart idea because you could see and tell when she was going off teleprompter because her tone, rhythm, and cadence would change. She's also pretty notoriously not good on her feet, despite saying she's a prosecutor. They're pretty smart to do that. One other clip from Harris at this rally about Trump and the debates.
So here's the thing. Here's the funny thing about that. So he won't debate, but he and his running mate sure seem to have a lot to say about me. And by the way, don't you find some of their stuff to just be plain weird? Well, Donald, I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say,
I suspect Donald Trump will take that challenge. And let's be honest here, this will actually be a pretty fiery debate. It's one I'm interested in seeing. He'll probably take lessons from Tulsi Gabbard, who went after Kamala Harris for arresting all the black men in California, and she couldn't handle it well. That's the one thing you have to understand about Kamala Harris is she does not take criticism well. She never did on the debate stage. She could dish it out, but she couldn't take it, and she didn't come across well. Trump actually can take the criticism better than Kamala Harris can. I'm sure they will have this debate. Scott Jennings on CNN talking about this wild situation, and of course now the media trying to memory hole that Kamala Harris was the border czar.
Border bill in decades that James Lankford negotiated, Democrats would be able to flip it on him. The issue Donald Trump is strongest and has the most credibility on is border security. Now you've got Kamala Harris saying, we wanted more CBP officers. We wanted to fight fentanyl. That is actually true. They were willing to support that bill, and Donald Trump decided not to. How Republicans stepped in it so bad with that is just beyond me.
There's no possible way Democrats could possibly believe they're going to fight to even a draw on the issue of immigration. I hope they run all their ads on immigration because it will remind the American people every time they turn on their television sets what a complete and utter failure this has all been. I mean, if they were so proud of their record, why is she working so hard to erase all evidence from the internet that she was in fact
really
the border czar?
Yes. Why? That was Alyssa Farah he was talking to. She's very excited now about Kamala Harris. I'm not sure why you want the Democrats to run on immigration. By the way, there was a noticeable, the media talks about vibe shifts. It's a vibe shift. Oh, the vibe shift for Harris. There's been a noticeable vibe shift in the last 24 hours. Despite Harris using the word weird on stage last night, the Democrats have started transitioning very rapidly away from using the word weird. Could it be because they have Rachel Levine on staff? And let's just acknowledge a man who dresses as a woman is weird. Could it be they had Sam What's-His-Name on staff who admitted to dressing up like a dog to engage in sexual acts? And that's just weird. And they left him on staff even as he was stealing women's luggage. And now they've got the new dude in office who has a mustache and wears miniskirts. That's just weird. The Democrats have suddenly decided, if we're going to make it weird that J.D. Vance is in a mixed race marriage with mixed race kids and thinks that the country should be producing kids, they might make it weird about us too. What's happening right now is Democrats have made this calculation that Americans are ready to embrace far more than I think Americans are actually willing to embrace. And it's starting to collapse on them. Now, I will tell you something else here. I know a guy, he's a reporter. He works for a liberal outlet, really hates Donald Trump. And he's convinced that Kamala Harris can win Georgia. The Democrats are suddenly convinced Kamala Harris can win Georgia. And I think she'll do better than Joe Biden in Georgia. But Georgia still remains a very big swing state, and I don't think Kamala Harris can win Georgia. If Stacey Abrams could not win Georgia, I don't think that Kamala Harris can win Georgia. And while Brian Kemp and Donald Trump don't have a great relationship, Brian Kemp has the ability to mobilize voters in the state in the way the Democrats don't, as he showed in 2022. In 2018, Brian Kemp had baggage tied to Donald Trump because of Trump's endorsement, and he barely won, but he won, and he even escaped a runoff. People forget Stacey Abrams didn't come so close to even making it to a runoff. She just lost. In 2020, Trump only lost by 11,000 some odd votes in the state of Georgia. Something happened between 2020 and 2024. In 2021, Kamala Harris was named the border czar. Now, I know if you're a Democrat, you refuse to believe that at this point, even though it was widely reported from CNN and Axios and NBC News and everyone else. And if you can't believe it now because they tell you it's not true, I want you to understand that you're actually that person who is a follower, not a leader, who doesn't think for yourself, because it was widely reported she was being put in charge of the border, not just the root causes. She was being put in charge of the border, so much so that Lester Holt asked her when she'd been to the border, and she got very defensive and said, well, I haven't even been to Europe. So Kamala Harris was put in as the border czar, and a girl named Laken Riley was murdered at the University of Georgia by an illegal immigrant who crossed over on Kamala Harris's watch. And the economy for suburbanites in Atlanta has not gone great as grocery prices have gone up from the Biden-Harris administration policy. So no, I don't actually think Kamala Harris can win Georgia. Other states, maybe. Michigan may be at play. But I don't think Georgia is for the Democrats. I think that Harris can win it no more than Biden can win it.
Tem momento na carreira que precisamos dar passo além. É hora de fazer uma pós-graduação. Só que muitas vezes o custo pesa no bolso, inviabilizando tudo. Com a pós-graduação do Senac, você não tem esse problema. Cursos com até 50% de desconto e muito mais tempo para pagar. TCC opcional, modelo flexível com aulas presenciais e online e alguns cursos com apenas 12 meses de duração. Não tem mais desculpa, hein? Saiba mais em sp.senac.br/pós-graduação.
Well, there's some additional breaking news happening right now. My gosh, it's like the night of the long knives. The leader of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard, Haj Habib Zada, has been assassinated in Syria. I wonder by whom. So let's put this all in perspective. In the last 24 hours, one of the senior leaders of Hamas killed in Iran. One of the senior leaders of Hezbollah killed in Beirut. And now the leader of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps dead in Syria. Israel is taking out its enemies systematically. And by the way, here is some news to put this all in perspective for you. News you need to understand to know what time it is. People like to talk about what time it is. It's a phrase they like to use. Israel has now, in the last 24 hours, killed one of the senior leaders of Hezbollah, killed one of the senior leaders of Hamas, and killed the leader of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and never told the United States of America first. Israel used to tell the United States that it was about to do these things. But under Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan, leakers have leaked the news to Israel's enemies and the press. And they haven't identified the leaker of some of the leaks. So Israel chose not to tell us. We're finding out nationally from the headlines that it's happened because Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden preside over an administration that is deeply infested with Iranian sympathizers and anti-Semites. As a result, Israel is taking care of business itself, as they should. By the way, this is going to, of course, have an effect on world markets as this stability starts to shift in the world. It's one reason you might want to be talking to Swiss America. They've been the trusted leader in precious metals for 40 years. They've been warning people about a secret war on cash for some time. If you're interested in safeguarding your hard-earned cash from the secret war on cash, you can get their report for free. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. Swiss America can educate you on protecting your assets in their report, The Secret War on Cash. This applies to digital forms of currency as well. You can go to SwissAmerica.com/Eric and get the report completely for free. ERICK. It takes less than 15 minutes to read, thoroughly informative. You can also get the report by calling or texting my name, Eric, to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. It applies to digital currencies too, and it's spreading. So get the report completely for free. Just mention Eric. You can call and mention my name or text my name to 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Go talk to Swiss America.
Esse podcast é um oferecimento de Samsung Galaxy AI. E sabe o que mais ele te oferece? Que tal uma nova maneira de buscar na internet a partir de fotos ou do que está na sua tela? Fácil, fácil. Viu? Circulou? Encontrou. Ou quem sabe um assistente de notas para gravar reuniões, transcrever gravações e organizar, produzindo resumos eficientes. Tem tanta coisa que o Samsung Galaxy AI pode fazer por você. Clique aí no banner para descobrir o que. Galaxy AI, a inteligência artificial nas suas mãos.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. The call screener has stepped out for a time, so the phone lines are closed. He's got to meet with the DeSantis team. He'll be at the gathering next week, and they're just working out some details. If you want to come see Ron DeSantis next week, or Mitch McConnell, or Speaker Mike Johnson, or Governor Brian Kemp, or Governor Kevin Stitt, or Governor Glenn Youngkin, or Vice President Mike Pence, or so many more, text ENGAGE to 33777, and I'll send you back the link. You can get a ticket. Today is the last day to get tickets. If you're a young professional, you use YR for a major discount. We got to talk about something substantive here. I should probably say we have to talk about something philosophical. I want to give you a quote from Gertrude Himmelfarb, famous historian. What was once stigmatized as deviant behavior is now tolerated and even sanctioned. What was once regarded as abnormal has been normalized. As deviancy is normalized, so what was once normal becomes deviant. The kind of family that has been regarded for centuries as natural and moral, the bourgeois family, as it is invidiously called, is now seen as pathological. You need to understand some basic history here. This is one of those few arguments I won with my wife, against my wife, I should say. Just the bourgeois. Who are the bourgeois? The bourgeois is a negative connotation in communist terminology. The bourgeois, in particular, is the middle and upper middle class. The reason is because the middle and upper middle class tend to maintain the means of production. It's not the capitalist robber baron who tends to control the means of production. It's the managerial class. And it is the owner of the small business who tends to be upper middle class. For example, I go play golf in the late afternoons. Usually I'm by myself. Sometimes I'll take a friend. And inevitably, behind me, a guy pulls up. His name's Kevin, and Kevin owns a franchise for the Great American Cookie Company. Great guy. Also great cookies. Kevin is upper middle class, I would say. I don't know that he would consider himself that, but he's upper middle class franchise owner of a company. He hires and fires, runs that franchise. He's not the wealthy ultimate company owner of the overall company. He owns the franchise, and he hires and he fires and he runs it. He would be considered, he and his family, bourgeois. There's another Kevin. Philip and I today, we ate at his restaurant. It's a old restaurant in Macon. It's been there since before I was in college, called the Bear's Den. It's what they call a meat and three. You get meat, you get 2 vegetables, you get a dessert, or you get bread with it. I always go on Wednesdays, and I get the same thing. They have incredible macaroni and cheese. The green beans are perfectly seasoned, little pieces of ham in it, and they have good chicken fingers. And then they have very good sweet potato pie. If I've never discussed it on this program before, the sweet potato is my favorite thing on planet Earth to eat. I love sweet potatoes. They have very good ones. And because I like Philip, I go on Wednesday and get the sweet potato pie instead of on Tuesday when they actually have the candied yams, which I would prefer to get, except he only comes to work on Wednesdays. He otherwise works at the house, but it's neither here nor there. I just did not get my candied yams yesterday because Philip didn't come to work. That's all I'm saying. He's in the next office. You can hear me yelling at him. But Kevin, also another Kevin, runs the Bear's Den, he and his wife. They're middle class. They're not lavishly wealthy. They're not private jet owners. They run a family business. They work very hard. They are very good at what they do. They hire, they fire, they treat their employees like family. They're the bourgeois. The bourgeois control the means of production because most people work for small businesses, not large businesses. And when you do work in a large business, you are overseen by someone who is not lavishly wealthy more often than not, but someone of the middle class and the upper middle class. And the communists hate them. The communists have always hated the middle class more than they've hated the lavishly wealthy. The communists always want to be lavishly wealthy. In fact, this is what happens in communism. Remember yesterday I mentioned the New York Times referred to Venezuela as brutal capitalism, that it was socialist, but now it's brutally capitalist with a small number of people controlling everything in society. That's actually communism. It's actually communism. Working, collaborating with the state, the means of production and control held by a handful of the elite. That's the way communist systems work. It's the way China works. It's the way the Soviet Union worked. It's the way Cuba works. It's the way North Korea works. There tend to be a handful of powerful families in charge. They've made of themselves an aristocracy. That the New York Times would prefer to call that brutal capitalism instead of accurately referring to Venezuela has descended to communism without the trappings of a Politburo and a Secretary General. It's the New York Times lying to its left-wing writers or readers. The left in postmodernism, like the communists, hate the bourgeois family. Why? Because the bourgeois family, that is the normal family, provides a stable society. When moms and dads, they have kids, they go to work, they raise their kids, and they perpetuate their value systems, it undermines the left's ability to control the future. It's why the left hates homeschooling so much and tends to actually hate churches so much, because you get to share your values with your kids in homeschool or in a Christian private school or things like that. They share your values, not the left's values. The left wants everyone into public school because the left controls the public schools and can indoctrinate your kids. It's not a secret that just per capita you get more trans kids coming out of public schools than private schools because the left indoctrinates and advocates there in the public schools, mostly not in the private schools. It's not an accident these things are happening in public schools. The best thing you can do for your child is to get your child out of a government-run school because that's where the left indoctrinates. And not everybody can. It's why Republicans should be very aggressively pursuing school choice across the nation. So those who can get out will get out. The left hates normal families. It is a statement of fact that the left tries to delegitimize, but it's still a statement of fact, that the kids raised in a two-parent heterosexual household will do better in life than anyone else. And that's why the left has tried to stigmatize people who grow up that way as having privilege. And that privilege means that you must sit back and let others act because you've been too privileged, as opposed to saying blessed, as opposed to saying my family did it the way you're supposed to do it to more stably perpetuate society. I should not be punished for my family doing it the way that best orders society. And yet the left wants you to be punished for participating in a family structure that more stably orders society because the left needs the chaos and the destabilization to advance its progressive agenda. Which leads me to weird. It's very funny, and this is the thing that gets me about how many stupid people there are. So you push back on the idea that everybody on the right is weird. Oh, it must have gotten under your skin. You must really hate to be labeled weird. Or actually, it's pointing out if you're going to apply it to people on the right, should we not apply it to Rachel Levine, the man who is the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, who participated in a redaction of ages of consent for gender conformity surgeries because they didn't want it out there that the Biden administration was cool with preteens altering their bodies and sterilizing themselves. That's kind of weird. The Democrats are taking a bet that Americans are far more willing to embrace men who think they're women and men who dress up like dogs to have sex than they are to embrace a veteran who's married to an Indian woman with mixed-race kids who thinks perpetuating the nation through the production of children through stable families, they think that's weird. They're vilifying the bourgeois family, as they would call it. Deviancy is becoming normalized. And when deviance becomes normalized, those reminders of normalcy must be vilified. When men can go chemically castrate themselves and engage in massive amounts of plastic surgery to conform their bodies to their ideal view of a woman, and we are forced to treat that as normal, we are then forced to treat normalcy as an act of deviance. It's why, for example, in this weird trans subculture of America, there's this massive, massive amount of conformity to pressure men to date and have sexual relationships with trans women. Oh, it's absolutely there. You should see the stuff that happens on Twitter, and you should see the writings in magazines like Rolling Stone and elsewhere, where if you're a man and you're not willing to engage in a sexual relationship with a trans woman who is actually a man, you're a transphobe. Actually, no, you're heterosexual. But they got to define normal as deviant to make deviant seem normal. And it's why I don't think that this weird talking point is going to be able to last long, because the Democrats have been gambling on the fact that Americans are far more willing to embrace deviancy than I think Americans actually are. One of the big issues that shows up out there in places like Connecticut and even California is that moms and dads don't like the idea of their daughters having to compete for college scholarships on women's sports teams against men. It turns out moms and dads don't like boys in their girls' locker room, particularly when those boys still have their boy parts and just grow their hair long. But that's where we're at in society, and it actually is kind of a tipping point. If the Democrats think J.D. Vance is weird and Sam Braxton or Rachel Levine are not, it is a tipping point. If Kamala Harris thinks standing next to a drag queen is normal, but J.D. Vance standing next to his wife is weird, that's a tipping point. Progressives are already at war with interracial adoption and mixed marriages. They actually are. The greatest antagonists towards interracial adoption in this country come from the progressive movement. Progressives have decided that black kids must be raised in black homes and white kids must be raised in white homes. Hispanic kids must be raised in Hispanic homes. They don't like interracial adoption. In fact, there are a number of progressives in office, including Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, when he was Attorney General in Pennsylvania, attacked adoption agencies like Catholic Charities for, among other things, not just engaging in preferencing heterosexual adoption, but also not thinking that a black kid needs to have some sort of racial awareness if adopted into a white family. The left is furious about interracial adoption. If you think interracial adoption is bad, but separating political supporters by their race and gender is good, you might be on the left, and you might actually be weird yourself. In fact, you want really weird? Kamala Harris is now doing an event. A buddy of mine, actually, where's his text message? He sent me this. I thought it was made up at first. So my buddy is Indian American. He says, I'm part of the demographic covered by this acronym and still don't know what it stands for. Democrats' insistence on jamming all Asian Americans and other groups into one is vile, stupid, and offensive, especially given that they openly condone anti-Asian discrimination. Kamala Harris is doing an event for AAN HPI men. AAN HPI men, come see Kamala Harris. What is an AAN HPI man? An Asian American Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander man. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but Hawaiians don't consider themselves Asians. Pacific Islanders tend to consider themselves Pacific Islanders or part of Micronesia. They don't consider themselves Asian. They might consider themselves Australian or New Zealand. And Asian Americans, I don't know about you, but I've never met an Asian American. I've never in my life met an Asian American, and you haven't either. You've met an Indian, you've met a Korean, you've met Taiwanese, you've met a Malaysian, you've met a Chinese, you've met someone who's Thai, you've met Singaporean, you've met Indonesian, you've never met an Asian American. You've never met an Asian person. The culture of the Indian subcontinent is as vastly different from Southeast Asia, is as vastly different from China, is as vastly different from the Korean Peninsula, is as vastly different from Japan. Lumping them all in together in the same way they do the Latinx community is actually not just weird, but contradicts everything we know about society. And yet, God forbid we point that out. Clearly, the weird label must have gotten under our skin, as opposed to point out that actually, dressing up like a dog to have sex, that's actually way more weird than J.D. Vance, and yet Democrats think that's normal. Now, I got to tell you about the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. I'm running along here. The Eden Pure 3-pack. You can get 3 of them for less than $200 and save $200 at EdenPureDeals.com. What it is an air purifier, so it's going to get rid of the pollen and the dust floating in the air, and it's going to do it without a filter because it uses electrostatic plates. So you never have to get a filter subscription. On top of that, it eliminates odors because it generates ozone, and the ozone traps odors. Ozone interacts with the ions. The odors are ions, and ozone locks into them, and they can't float around, and it eliminates those odors, and it works. So, for example, if you've got a fireplace odor in your house and you plug it in Eden Pure Thunderstorm near the fireplace odor goes away. You get in a rental car, someone smoked in, and you plug it in Eden Pure Thunderstorm with a USB cord, it'll take those or directly into the wall. It wipes out the odors. You got a nursery, and you got one of those, the thingy that you put the diapers in, and it's like the Python, and you twist, and it locks them, the dirty diaper disposal, but it still kind of smells. The Eden Pure Thunderstorm takes care of the dirty diaper smell. You can get 3 of them for less than $200 and save $200. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3, at EdenPureDeals.com.
Ideal mesmo para o mundo atual seria fazer o ensino médio junto com o curso técnico, certo? É no Senac que o aluno tem autonomia de verdade, formação cidadã, foco na diversidade, preparação para o Enem, material didático sem taxas e muito mais. Na real, tem tudo que você precisa para se sentir preparado para a vida. Seja para entrar no mundo do trabalho ou te ajudar a decidir o que fazer na faculdade. Quer saber? Senac. Vem comigo! Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino-médio-técnico.
And reports that another Iranian general has been assassinated in Israel, or in Syria, rather. My goodness. Israel has taken them all out. Okay. I acknowledge in advance I'm about to get myself in a lot of trouble with some listeners. I just saw a report in the New York Post that people are petitioning water parks to ban G-string bikinis, and I get it. You don't want your kids seeing G-string bikinis at the water park. I'm just saying, as a dad, if I got to suffer through the water park taking my kids there, I want something to look at, preferably someone who actually is worth looking at. I'm just saying, people have too much time on their hands. That's it. You can send me hate mail now.